My name is Major Sarah Mitchell, 35 years old. Fourth deployment just ended. Afghanistan again. Same dust, same heat, same body bags, zipped in silence. But this time, something in my gut told me, don't tell anyone you're coming home. So I didn't. No texts, no calls, no smiling post with a flag filter. I packed my gear, turned in my rifle, and flew 22 hours back to the States without a word. By the time my boots hit the sidewalk outside my grandparents' house in Masonville, Virginia, the sun was sinking low and angry behind the oaks. Porch light off. That was the first bad sign. The second was silence when I knocked. But I still had the key. Brass, worn smooth. The one Grandpa gave me at 13. If you ever need to get in, this will still work. He was right. The lock clicked, and I stepped into a silence that pressed down on my chest like concrete. The air smelled wrong. Not dirty, not rotten, just hollow, like no one had breathed there in too long. I called out for Grandma. Nothing. The living room came first, neat as always, blanket folded, TV remote lined up with surgical precision. Then the kitchen. Then her garden shoes by the back door. And finally, the main bedroom. That's where I found her. Lying in the hospital bed we set up 2 years ago after the stroke. Same green sheets, same flowered pillowcases. But now machines stood where people should have been. Oxygen hissing in soft rhythm, a monitor glowing pale blue, her hand limp. One eye half open, as if she wanted to wake but couldn't decide if it was worth the effort. No nurse, no aide, no family. Just her, the machines, and me. I stood there 5 whole minutes before I could move. My stomach felt made of sand and steel and bad memories. I checked the IV line, wiped her mouth with a tissue, adjusted her blanket. I whispered, "It's me, Grandma. Sarah's home." She didn't stir. My eyes scanned the room. No get well cards, no glass of water, no fresh flowers, only silence. That's when I pulled out my phone. Maybe I missed something. No texts from Mom, no voicemails from Dad. Just one new Facebook post an hour old. Sunsets in Hawaii never get old. No regrets. Retired life. Finally free. My parents, cocktails in hand, grinning on a beach, as if they didn't have a mother lying here with one foot in the grave. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. The numbness I carried from the army snapped sharp. This wasn't forgetting. This wasn't being busy. This was abandonment. I walked down the hall past the old photo of Grandpa in his Navy uniform. He stared straight into the camera, like he was looking through time at me. His safe was in the study, the one locked my whole childhood. Everyone thought it held gold coins or secret documents. Only he and I knew the truth. He told me once, the day I got my commission, "If anything happens to me or your grandmother and they don't show up, you open the safe. You'll know what to do." By they, he meant my parents. His son, his daughter-in-law. I knelt, tapped in my service number. The lock opened like it had been waiting. Inside was a thick envelope. My name was written in my grandfather's hard block letters. "Sarah, if you're reading this, it means I trusted you'd be here." I took a breath, opened the envelope, and felt the air shift. No cash, no keys, no offshore account numbers. Just papers. 4 sheets, 3 typed, 1 handwritten. The typed ones were thick with legal weight, notarized, dated 2 years back. Title across the top, Last Will and Testament of James Henry Mitchell. his full name. Navy veteran, World War II. Son of a Virginia coal miner. Husband. Father. A man betrayed. The will was clean, cold, without apology. If my son and daughter-in-law do not appear within 12 hours of my or my wife's incapacitation or death, they forfeit all inheritance, financial or otherwise. 12 hours. Grandma had been on life support for 3 days, I would confirm later in her hospital records. In that case, all assets, liquid or fixed, transfer to my granddaughter, Major Sarah Mitchell, United States Army, the only one in this family who still upholds the values of honor, duty, and presence. That word hit me hardest. Presence. He didn't write about love, or loyalty, or even blood. He wrote presence, because showing up mattered more than posting margarita selfies. I stared at that clause for a long time. My fingers shook, not from shock, but from recognition. He had seen this coming. He knew they'd vanish when it mattered most, not out of malice, but out of habit, out of selfishness, wrapped in self-care. They always said things like, "We've earned our peace," or "Now it's our time," as if raising children gave them permission to erase their parents once they became inconvenient. The 4th page was handwritten, just for me. Sarah, if you're reading this, they've already failed the final test. Don't feel guilty. Don't argue. Don't negotiate. Just carry out what's written. They chose the beach. You chose the bedside. That's all the court needs to know. P.S. The attorney's name is Margaret Henderson. Her number is taped under the desk drawer. She's waiting for this. I didn't cry. Didn't shout. I just stood. Walked to his desk, peeled back the underside of the top drawer, and found the number scrawled in faded Sharpie. Margaret Henderson. She picked up on the 2nd ring. "Major Mitchell," she said, calm, as if we'd spoken yesterday. "Your grandfather told me if you were the one calling, it meant the rest weren't worth a dime. I guess the time has come." "It has," I said. "Good," she replied. "I'll file the trigger clause immediately. You don't have to do a thing. Your presence there is proof enough I gave her the hospital's fax number," and hung up. Then I sat back down in Grandpa's study, still in uniform, still carrying the dust of airports, and waited for the storm. I didn't have to wait long. 10 minutes later, the hospital called my mother. 15 after that, the first ping hit my phone, then another, then another. I didn't answer. I watched the sunlight crawl down the wall like it had somewhere better to be. Watched Grandma's monitor blink like a tired heartbeat refusing to give up. 2 hours later, I finally looked at my phone. 19 missed calls. Mom, Dad, their lawyer, even my brother, who hadn't called Grandma in 6 months, suddenly rediscovering his deep concern for family unity. Almost funny. Almost. Because when people think control belongs to them, they stop checking the locks. They stop showing up. They grow lazy. But the moment that control slips away, the moment the will no longer bends to their hands, the money moves without their permission, that's when the panic sets in. That's when they start dialing. That's when they realize they were never the center of the story. They were just supporting actors in someone else's legacy. And I was the only one who stayed long enough to turn the final page. The next morning, I brewed a pot of coffee in Grandma's kitchen. Same chipped kettle, same cabinet groaning on its hinges. The smell of old paper and wood almost tricked me into thinking life was normal again. That maybe, just maybe, I'd hear her singing hymns, cracking eggs into a pan, telling me it was time to cut my hair. But the machines kept humming in the next room, oxygen hissing like a sleeping dragon. And my parents? Still 300 miles away, sipping overpriced cocktails in swimsuits that probably cost more than a year of Grandma's medicine. They still hadn't shown up. Hadn't even booked a flight. But they had called over and over through the night. By 10 a.m., the missed call counter had climbed past 180. I hadn't answered a single one. Instead, I met Margaret Henderson in the hospital's administrative office. She was older than I expected, pushing 70. Crisp beige suit, steady hands that looked like they'd once tightened bolts, faded Marine Corps tattoo peeking from under her cuff. She greeted me like family. James was a remarkable man. Trusted you more than oxygen. Together we spread out the papers. The trigger clause was airtight. Grandpa hadn't just written a will, he'd drafted an operations manual. He'd already given me medical power of attorney for both him and Grandma if my parents failed to appear. Named me executor. Listed every bank account down to the branch. Laid out contingencies. Even included a modest $5,000 donation to the Masonville War Memorial, inscribed, "For those forgotten, but who still showed up." I signed where I needed to, steady, no separate lawyer required. Margaret handled the rest. And then came the call that changed everything. Hospital administration received official confirmation. My parents would not arrive within the required time window. Their stated reason, scheduling conflicts and emotional strain. I nearly laughed. They had 3 whole days, and in that time they posted 17 photos from Hawaii. Yachts, lobster dinners, spa selfies, and one caption that stung more than the rest. Finally learning how to truly live. No guilt, no obligations. No obligations, huh? Then they had no legal rights either. At 11:32 a.m., I stood at Grandma's bedside and signed the order to shift her into full comfort care. No more machines, no more tubes. Just dignity, the kind she should have had days earlier. I held her hand as the nurse gently removed the IV and dimmed the lights. She didn't wake, she didn't flinch. But I swear her breathing slowed, steadied, as if her body finally understood it was allowed to stop fighting. I whispered, "I'm here, Grandma. I'm still here." And then I sat down and waited. It wasn't dramatic. No music, no sighs, no single tear sliding down a cheek. Just silence, stillness, and then peace. At 12:14 p.m., Grandma Mitchell passed away. 10 seconds later, my phone buzzed. This time, I answered. It was my mother, her voice sharp, breathless, panicked. "Sarah, what did you do?" "What did you do?" "Grandma's gone," I said softly. "What? You had no right to make that decision. We're family." "You weren't here," I cut in. "Not for 3 days." "We were in Hawaii. Your father needed rest. I didn't know we—" "She's gone, Mom. And the will is executed. You can call a lawyer or a therapist. I don't care which." "You cold little—" I hung up, turned the phone off. She didn't call again. Not for an hour. But when she did, the numbers multiplied. By 3 p.m., there were 41 missed calls. From her, from Dad, from their lawyer, from 3 numbers I didn't recognize. Probably cousins who hadn't spoken in years, suddenly discovering their deep concern. But the switch had already flipped. The papers were filed. accounts locked. The house was mine. The land, the savings, the name, all transferred without a shout, without a fight, without fists slamming on tables. Because the truth is, real power doesn't scream. It signs the paperwork and lets silence do the work. They landed the next morning, private car from Dallas, designer luggage, sunglasses too big for the storm they were walking into. I heard the crunch of tires on gravel before I saw them. From Grandma's bedroom window, I watched my father step out first, jaw tight, shoulders squared, always posturing, as if still in command of something. My mother followed, phone pressed to her ear, already shouting at someone, her free hand slicing the air like she could wave away reality. They didn't knock, of course not. They walked in as if they still owned the place, as if nothing had changed. I sat waiting in Grandpa's study, papers spread across the desk, black coffee steaming beside the old brass lamp, the envelope still there, and the photo of him and Grandma in uniform, taken in 1951. Proud, tired, real. Footsteps, then the door opened, and that's when the real war began. My mother came in first. She didn't greet me. She just stared at the envelope on the desk like it had personally insulted her. My father stood behind, silent, but his face was flushed red. "You had no right," she snapped. "You had no authority to make that decision." 3 days, I said calmly. 3 days to come home. She died alone. That's on you. You think this is about you? About your little uniform fantasy and your need for control? No, I said. This is about Grandma. About Grandpa. About showing up. Something you stopped doing a long time ago. My father's voice came out like gravel. You're making a mistake, Sarah. This will be overturned. I spoke to Michael. We'll sue. Michael the lawyer? Or Michael your golf buddy? Because I doubt either can erase a notarized will, 2 hospital timestamps, and a sharp memory. James was confused when he wrote that, my mother hissed. No, I said. He was angry, but clear as glass. My father stepped toward the desk. Hand me that will. No. Sarah, I'm his son. I have rights. Rights? I cut him off. The right to abandon your parents for a tea time? The right to let Grandma lie alone with a ventilator while you sipped Mai Tais? His face purpled. I worked hard my whole life. I deserve rest. And what did she deserve? She had the best care. She was abandoned. My voice rose for the first time. Did you know her call button was unplugged? Did you know she never had a single get well card? Did you know she asked for you every day? Silence, long and heavy. My mother broke it. We needed time for ourselves. You don't understand the pressure of caregiving. Pressure? I stood. I just got back from Afghanistan. I know pressure. Pressure isn't leaving your parents to rot while you tan in Hawaii. My father growled. You always think you're better than us. Strutting in that uniform with your holier-than-thou attitude. No, I just think I understand duty. The thing you taught me as a kid and then forgot. Don't lecture me about duty. I served this country 40 years ago, and now you use it as an excuse to dodge responsibility. He came closer. Hand me that will. Right now? Or what? Or I'll call the police. Tell them you're stealing. With what evidence? I have the legal will. What do you have? Selfies from Hawaii? My mother stepped in. Sarah, listen to me. I'm your mother. I love you. But this has to stop. I laughed, bitter. You love me? You haven't called me in 8 months, never asked if I was safe, never cared where I was. But now that there's money involved, you suddenly love me? This isn't about money. It's all about money. If it wasn't, why didn't you come visit her? Why didn't you care whether she lived or died until I called to say she was gone? My father slammed the desk. Enough! You're a disgraceful child. He was senile. This will isn't valid. He wasn't senile. Prove it. And that's when I smiled. For the first time since coming home. A cold smile. The kind you get when you know you're holding the winning card. All right. I slid open the drawer, pulled out a USB drive, and placed it gently on the desk. He recorded a video. A year ago, for anyone who wanted to challenge the will. Their faces drained of color. In it, he explains why he wrote it, why he didn't trust you, why he knew you'd abandon her. You're lying, my mother whispered. Do you want to see? I plugged the USB into Grandpa's laptop. The screen flickered to life. And there he was, sitting in his familiar armchair, gray cardigan, blue plaid blanket across his knees, eyes still sharp. If you're watching this, his voice filled the room, it means my son did exactly what I predicted. My mother recoiled like she'd been slapped. James, my father began. I write this will with a clear mind, Grandpa continued. No one forced me. No one manipulated me. I simply looked at my son and saw a man who'd forgotten what duty means. Turn it off, my mother snapped. Grandpa's eyes locked on the camera. Sarah, if you're watching this with them, remember, you chose right. You stayed. That's all I need to know. Then he leaned forward. And to my son, if you're listening, you had chances. 30 years of chances. You chose golf over family, chose Hawaii over the hospital. These are the consequences. The screen went black. The room went silent. My father slumped into a chair. My mother clutched her stomach like she'd been punched. It's not valid, my father muttered. We'll sue. You'll lose, I said quietly. He prepared for everything. The video is just one piece. There are medical records, timestamps, witness statements. Margaret Henderson's been doing this for 30 years. She's never lost. They looked at each other, and for the first time, I saw it in their eyes. They knew. They'd already lost. You'll regret this, my mother finally said. I already do, I answered. Every birthday you forgot. Every anniversary you skipped. Every time Grandma asked if you'd called and I had to lie. They stood, said nothing more, just walked toward the door. But before leaving, my father turned back, his eyes cold as steel. What does that video prove? An angry old man? We've got the best lawyers in Dallas. We've got money. We've got connections. My mother nodded. You think you've won? You haven't seen anything yet. 3 months from now, my father said, you'll stand in court. And we'll prove you manipulated a weak old man. The door closed. This time, it was truly war. 3 months later, I was sued. They went all the way, filed formal action against me in state court. Undue influence, elder coercion, executor fraud. The kind of dramatic language you hire when you can't win on facts, so you throw words like darts and hope one sticks. When I handed Margaret the envelope, she chuckled. They're desperate, she said, flipping through the pages. They don't have a case. They just want noise. And if they win, they won't. But they can make your life miserable for a while. She was right. For the next 3 months, I was under bombardment. Their lawyers filed motions to suspend the will, freeze accounts, block any transactions. They hired private investigators to tail me, hoping to dig up evidence of misconduct. They reached out to people in the army, fishing for anything that might tarnish my record. They even hired a PR firm to run a smear campaign. Suddenly, I was on the local news as the young soldier who manipulated her grandparents to seize their estate. They had family friends giving interviews, saying how I'd always been different, how I had problems with authority. I didn't respond. Margaret told me to stay silent. "Let them make noise," she said. "The truth speaks in court." But those were the hardest 3 months of my life. Harder than Afghanistan. At least there, I knew who the enemy was. Here, neighbors looked at me with suspicion. Old acquaintances avoided me. Even a few brothers in arms started to question. The day of the hearing finally came, mid-June, a small county courthouse. No jury, just a judge, a clerk, and whatever dignity we could carry into that room. I wore my uniform that day, not to boast, just because it felt right. It still carried the smell of desert dust and hospital floors. I hadn't washed it. I didn't want to. They arrived with an army of lawyers, 2 lead attorneys and a squad of assistants lugging boxes of files. They looked like they were gearing up for the trial of the century. When the judge asked for opening statements, their lead attorney rose. Tall man, $3,000 suit. Silver hair, perfect as a magazine ad. He looked at me with undisguised contempt. "Your Honor, this case is about greed," he began. "About a young soldier who exploited the trust of her frail grandparents. Major Mitchell isolated them from their family, manipulated them at their most vulnerable, and coerced them into signing an unjust will." He paced the courtroom like he was performing Shakespeare. "We will show that James Mitchell was under the influence of illness and medication when this will was written, that he was manipulated by someone trained in psychological warfare, by the Army itself." He sat down as if he'd just delivered the Gettysburg Address. Then Margaret stood. Simple suit, silver hair pulled back tight. She looked more like a teacher than an attorney. "Your Honor," she said, "what the other side forgets is the simplest truth. A young woman came home from war and found her grandmother abandoned, while her parents vacationed in Hawaii. She didn't raise her voice. No theatrics, just calm, steady truth. They had 3 full days to return. Instead, they posted 17 photos on social media bragging about having no obligations. Their own words. Then she slid the USB into the screen. And James Mitchell saw this coming. This is the video he recorded 1 year before his death. The screen lit up. There was Grandpa, sitting in his familiar armchair, gray cardigan, blue plaid blanket, eyes sharp as a blade. "If you're watching this," his voice filled the silent courtroom, "it means I am either dead or close to it. So let's skip the pleasantries." He leaned forward. "I wrote this will myself. Every word. No one told me what to say. No one held my hand. The young woman playing this video, Major Sarah Mitchell, is the only one in this family who still understands what it means to show up when it's hard." The courtroom went completely silent. Even the clerk's fingers froze above the keyboard. "My son, God bless him, is too busy with golf. His wife can't miss her massages. They'll claim I was confused, manipulated. Let me be clear. I have more clarity of mind than most of Congress.
And if they couldn't be present when their own mother was dying, they don't deserve even the dirt beneath her fingernails. He looked straight into the lens. Sarah, this is war. But I trained you for that. Hold the line. The screen went black. Silence fell. The kind that clamps around your throat and dares anyone to breathe. The judge turned to their attorney. Do you have anything to rebut this video? Medical records, physician statements, anything beyond theory? The silver-haired lawyer rose, shuffled his papers, opened his mouth, closed it again. Your Honor, we believe this video is highly emotional, and that is not an answer to my question. Margaret stood again. I call my witness, Major Sarah Mitchell. I stepped to the stand, laid my hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. I didn't cry. I didn't preach. I just spoke the truth of the night I came home. The machines glowing in the dark.
The hollow silence of an empty house. The Facebook post from Hawaii. The abandonment that weighed heavier than any illness. I described Grandma's final moments, her cold hand in mine, the way her breathing slowed when she was finally allowed to rest. The words I whispered, I'm here, Grandma. I'm still here. I ended with, the only line that mattered. I never asked for an inheritance. I just stayed. And they didn't. The judge thanked me. Their attorney declined cross-examination. He withdrew to chambers for 10 minutes. When he returned, he read from a single sheet of paper that would become part of the public record. This court finds no evidence of coercion or fraud. The decedent's statements were consistent, deliberate, and binding. The plaintiff's absence during their parents' final days speaks louder than any legal brief. Major Mitchell is the lawful executor and sole beneficiary. Case dismissed with prejudice. No theatrics. No gavel slam. Just truth, set down in ink. As I rose to leave, my mother hissed under her breath, You'll regret this. I looked at her one last time, not with anger, not even with pity, just a cold, detached clarity. I already did, I said. Every birthday you forgot her. Every anniversary you skipped. Every time she asked if you'd call, and I had to lie. Then I turned my back, walked out of that courthouse without looking behind me. The war was finally over, and this time, it was truly a victory. I moved into the house for a while. Not forever. I never belonged in a quiet neighborhood of retirees and cracked sidewalks. But I couldn't leave right away either. Something unfinished lingered there. A kind of silence that didn't feel empty, just waiting. I kept Grandma's room intact, folded her blanket, watered the violets, left her chair by the window as it was. Some mornings I sat there with a cup of coffee, letting the sun crawl across the floor the way it always had. I could almost hear her voice, low and warm, still calling me Sarah the way she did when I was 5. The calls stopped after the verdict. First silence from my parents, then a trickle of venom online. Not from them, of course. They didn't have the courage. But from their orbit, second cousins, family friends, people I hadn't seen since I was 12, suddenly full of opinions about loyalty and legacy. I ignored them all. Instead, I spent my days in Grandpa's study. Letters, journals, receipts dating back to 1983. He kept everything. Not out of sentiment, but precision. The way a man trained to count bullets also counts blessings. One morning, I found something unexpected. A box labeled "For Emergencies." Inside was his funeral flag, folded into a perfect triangle, sealed in plastic. And beneath it, a note. "I've had my honors. Don't bury me twice. Give this to someone who will remember what it means." I stared at that triangle of stars and stripes for a long time. That evening, I drove to Arlington, parked just before sunset, walked past the rows of silence, gravel crunching under my boots, until I found his stone. James Henry Mitchell, Master Chief Petty Officer, U.S. Navy, 1925 to 2006. Honor before comfort. I stood there until the sky turned lavender. Then I knelt and set the flag beneath his name. No words, no prayer, just presence. I didn't notice the old man until he spoke. "You're his." I turned. A veteran in a wheelchair, leather jacket, faded USS Missouri cap. Eyes aged but sharp. "I'm his granddaughter," I said. He nodded slowly. "I served under him. Korea, 1951. Hardest man I ever knew." We talked 10 minutes about the ship, the drills, the time Grandpa decked a lieutenant who tried to dock drunk. "Got a week in the brig and a standing ovation," the old man chuckled. I handed him the folded flag. He looked at me like I'd given him gold. "This isn't mine to keep." "I think he wanted you to have it." His eyes blinked twice. He saluted. I saluted back. Then I walked away. Back at the house, I cleared the last closet, found a shoebox full of my childhood drawings. One showed a stick figure me in uniform, standing beside a silver-haired man with a giant American flag behind us. I had scrawled at the bottom, "I'll protect you when you're old." I don't remember drawing it, but I knew it was true. I had protected him, protected her. Even if it meant cutting my own bloodline. Even if it meant walking alone. Because that's the thing about silence. Real silence. It doesn't mean you lost the argument. It means you ended it forever. No rebuttal, no spin. Just truth standing where everything else collapses. And once you learn to live inside that silence, you never go back to the noise. The legacy wasn't vast. Some land, the house, a few investment accounts. Grandpa was never one to hoard wealth. He believed money should do something, not just sit there collecting dust and bitterness. I sold the beach condo they left behind, the one my parents visited once a year, just long enough to snap pictures for Christmas cards. They never even noticed it was gone. They'd already moved on to their next campaign, public sympathy. A month after the court ruling, my father published an op-ed in some online magazine for estranged fathers. Claimed I was a militant granddaughter who brainwashed dying grandparents into abandoning their only son. He even used the phrase, emotional kidnapping. It was almost funny. Almost. But I didn't laugh. I saved the link for the record, because I know people like him. They never stop until they've convinced themselves they rewrote the past. So I started building something that couldn't be rewritten. 6 months after Grandma's death, I founded the Mitchell Foundation. Small, local, focused. The mission? Provide in-home support for aging veterans with no family to care for them. Nurses, transportation, grief counseling, honor guards at funerals. All covered, no questions asked. I used Grandpa's money. His house became the foundation's first office. His study, once locked tight, turned into a space for free legal help and will preparation. We printed brochures with his photo and the words he wrote years before. Honor before comfort. And people came. Old Marines, quiet Army medics, a Coast Guardsman who hadn't spoken to his family in 20 years, but showed up every Friday just to drink burnt coffee and talk about the weather. They told me stories of broken families, dying wives, hospital visits where no one showed up except volunteers in vests carrying folded flags. One of them, Harold, a 91-year-old Navy radio tech, cried when I told him we'd cover his rent and send a nurse twice a week. He gripped my hand and whispered, I thought I was done being remembered. The local paper ran a front-page story. Granddaughter turns betrayal into brotherhood. Mitchell Foundation serves forgotten veterans. My mother sent me a screenshot. No words, just a red question mark. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. They'd had their chance to show up, and they didn't. A year later, we held our first Memorial Day gathering. Not the big kind with flags and speeches and parades. Ours was different, quiet, in the backyard of the old Hall House. 37 folding chairs, a table with name cards, a single empty chair at the front with Grandpa's photo, and a bronze star resting on a square of velvet. I stood and spoke, told the truth about war, about absence, about how legacy isn't what you leave behind in a will. Legacy is who shows up when no one's watching. I read the last words Grandpa ever wrote to me. In the end, don't fight for applause. Fight for the ones who aren't in the room to clap. When the ceremony ended, a man in full dress blues walked up. Early 30s, cell insignia, a chest full of ribbons. He said, I served with your cousin, Michael. He told me what your family tried to pull. I braced myself, ready for a lecture. But the man smiled, slow and certain. Damn. Proud of you. Takes guts to stand alone. I still visit the grave every few months. Not out of duty, not even out of grief. Just to check in, to sit down, breathe the clean air, and know that no matter how loud the world gets, I once chose the harder road, and stayed. Stayed with the woman who raised me. Stayed when others walked away. Stayed long enough to hold her hand, sign the papers, and carry forward a legacy that blood alone can't earn. Some people inherit money. I inherited purpose. And unlike money, purpose doesn't run out. It grows quietly, like honor does. If this story stays with you, we ask just one thing. Remember her. Not for the uniform, not for the war, but for the silence she kept while others shouted to cover the truth. This is our channel, and we tell the stories no one else will. Subscribe if you're still here. Because if you are, it means you were meant to be.